Well, I think it's great that there's a deal. It's very important that there should have been. I was always optimistic there would be because there's such a strong mutual self-interest in having a deal. Bouncing out without a deal would have been bad news on both sides, particularly at this time when economies on both sides are pretty fragile as a result of the COVID crisis. And this is the best that could have been done. As once the British government had decided, which was a perfectly reasonable thing to do, it's not would not have been my preference, but it was a perfectly reasonable thing to do to say we don't want to be in the customs union, we don't want to be in the single market. I would have preferred to stayed in the single market as an interim measure, but the government decided they didn't want to do that. And this is actually, as an outcome, it's as good as you could have got and achieved with actually, although I didn't expect it to go quite so much up to the wire in terms of timing as it eventually did. It's a decent outcome. Free movement of goods has been pretty much preserved, not frictionless, because once you're outside the single market, you can't guarantee that, but it's pretty good. And of course, there's an interest in both sides in making in facilitating free movement of goods to the maximum extent, because of course the EU 27 has a trade surplus in goods with the UK. And so it'll be very much in their interest to make sure these arrangements can work in as friction-free way as is possible. But there will be disruptions, and it'll take time. There will, as Michael Gove said yesterday, it'll be bumpy along the way, for sure.
On that point specifically, do you think that businesses should have been given a little bit more time to adjust to these new terms of trade? And particularly to your point, yes, there's going to be tariff-free, quota-free trade going on as far as goods are concerned, but there will be trade barriers. They'll have to fill in millions of customs forms. There will be border checks, regulatory checks to contend with as well. Do you think that businesses could have been given, say, a couple of months to get over some of these hurdles before launching into it on January the 1st?
Yeah, that would have been better for sure, and it would have been better if this deal could have been arrived at earlier, and maybe it might have been if effectively 2 or 3 months were lost in the spring through the effect of COVID, which closed and meant governments everywhere had their bandwidth completely kind of soaked up with dealing with this hugely unexpected and demanding crisis of the pandemic. And maybe it could have been done earlier. Maybe anyway, it would have always ended up going right up to the wire, because these things so often do. But clearly it would have been better. But just in terms of all that paperwork, I mean, it'll take time for this to settle down, absolutely, for sure. But actually there is an interest in both sides in making this as easy as possible, because, as I say, the flow of goods, the interconnected supply chains that there are, particularly in automotive and aerospace, these are hugely important industries, both in the UK but also in the EU 27. And finding ways to make this work ever better. What we start with will not necessarily, I suspect, be where we end up, and technology will help over time to make all of this easier.